Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly briefing with Grant May. I am, in fact, your host, Grant May, and I hope you've had a wonderful past 2 weeks. Before we get into today's episode, two quick housekeeping notes. For starters, I apologize for the lack of an episode last week. Lots of things happened in my personal life, and then I was out of town over the weekend when I typically record, so I was unable to record. So I'm very, very sorry. I know I left my poor children starving for content. No, don't call CPS. Don't have them come arrest me. Don't have them come take custody over you. I promise we are back. We're here to stay. I won't leave anymore. I won't leave my little kids. Dad just had to go away for a little bit of me time. So please don't contact CPS. Secondly, quick note, I am excited to be joining you this year at the Counteract USA conference this Friday and Saturday. This was sort of a last-minute addition to my schedule. God in his sovereignty saw fit that my schedule would magically be cleared. I was supposed to be moving to Washington, D.C. this weekend, but I am not. And so God reordered my life, and I'm able to attend. So go and get your tickets now. Show up. It's going to be a great event. I look forward to seeing many of you there. I'm hearing that we have very fine people that will be attending, so grab your tickets now. And if any of you come up to me at this conference and you're dressed like slobs, I'll be very disappointed in you. Saving the West, it starts with you and me. Saving the culture begins by not wearing those baggy jeans to the conference. So show up dressed to kill. And we're going to have a great time. All right. So what is the topic that we are going to be discussing today? Well, ultimately, most of my topics so far, I kind of looked back and they kind of come down on one of two themes. I think there's a two-front war we are currently waging. And so most of my episodes have to deal with either one of these two fronts. The first that I have detailed at length is multiculturalism. I did a full episode on multiculturalism. I encourage you to check that out. But I think I'm going to do in the coming days a much deeper dive into the immigration aspect of multiculturalism. I'm currently reading a book by Pat Buchanan, who, if you don't know who Patrick Buchanan is, shame on you. We're going to get that right. Patrick Buchanan was a visionary. And I'm reading this book. It's called State of Emergency. And in 2006, Patrick Buchanan was blowing the whistle, warning us what was to come if the Republican Party did not do what was right and did not act in its best interest. And today, we are seeing the effects of that. So he's specifically talking about what mass migration has done to this country, both legal and illegal. Highly encourage you to read it. I'll maybe go through with some of my highlights in a coming episode. But all I can say is Pat Buchanan was a visionary, and in this house, we respect Patrick Buchanan. The second front, so the first front is multiculturalism. The second front that I've often talked about is that we are fighting a war against, it's a secular pagan war that's currently being waged on our once Christian country. That is the virus, and the symptoms manifest themselves in the form of the destruction of the nuclear family, abortion, the grooming in our public school systems, the pride parades in our streets, and the all-out assault on objective truth, goodness, and beauty. So today, the story that I'm wanting to cover falls squarely into the latter category. I read this week about a young man who had a strong case of autism, but at this point, with autism rates going through the roof, I mean, who doesn't? I also, just a side note, I think autistic people are wildly fascinating and at times better than their non-neurodivergent friends because they're actually interesting. They have hyperfixations and they're better off because of it. Most of the time, they're more interesting than their non-autistic counterparts. And then they also want to be left alone, so they're not bothering you. I love my autistic friends. I've worked with a fair amount of autistic youth, and there are a lot of challenges that come with having autism. But I think a lot of times autistic people get a bad rap. They're actually pretty cool. Anywho, there was this autistic teenager in Washington, D.C., and he was dating this girl. He was 16 and she broke up with him. And this led him to spiral to the point of self-harm. He was trying to take his own life, unfortunately, and thankfully he was unsuccessful in that attempt. He ended up in the hospital And in the hospital, he expressed to those around him that he believed himself to truly be a girl and that he would like to transition. His parents saw that he was clearly in a volatile mental state and denied him this request, as they should have done. But the hospital doctors and the nurses, they then took custody over him and locked his parents out because his parents were denying him this gender obscuring care. Just a quick side note, I hate the term gender affirming care. Our enemies love to weaponize words and their meanings, and we oftentimes just go right along with it. Don't let them get away with calling it gender affirming care. It does no such thing. It actually does the opposite. When you take hormone altering drugs and puberty suppressors, and then you remove parts of your body surgically, then you're not affirming your gender, you're obscuring it. And so we can't let them get away with calling it gender affirming care, because if they get away with that, then they've already won. We also have to redevelop the gag reflex. I remember the first time when I saw two men kiss. I was a little kid and I was watching The Amazing Race. I was a huge fan of The Amazing Race growing up. And now, being an adult, I realize that every season, basically, there's at least one gay team. However, at the time, I did not know what it meant to be gay. I did not know any of that world. And so The Amazing Race is a show where these teams race around the world, and they have the firemen, they have the mother-daughter, and then they have, the gay team. And I remember watching, and there was this team of super weak and wimpy, effeminate men. My brother and I, we often, we thought they were hilarious, honestly, watching them do challenges. And so we got in trouble a lot because we would go around the house acting like them. We would try and do their voice. And we thought it was the funniest thing. Well, they ended up winning the race. And as they jumped onto the mat, that image is forever scarred into my brain. They jump on the mat and they start going to town, just kissing each other. And I don't think I will ever forget that moment. The natural disgust in that moment is how we as humans were designed and wired to feel when we witness debased and disordered sexual behavior. Due to the prevalence of this behavior all around us, though, we slowly yet surely have become desensitized to it. They expose it to us so often that we lose that which is natural in our response. The same thing can be said, this happens in the pornography industry, because porn is designed to emit unnatural levels of dopamine, and it rewires your brain to require bigger and bigger hits of dopamine. It encourages addicts to seek more graphic and grotesque styles. I've known many individuals, many minors, who actually blamed pornography and the porn industry for them coming to experience same-sex attraction, that it so rewired their brain that they needed newer and weirder forms of pornography, that they eventually started watching same-sex porn, and then they started having those desires. That's a topic for another time altogether, but the porn industry is without a doubt fueling some of the record levels of LGBTQ, AI plus, furry stuff, craziness that we are witnessing today. It's really sad, and we got to find a way to curtail its war on our countrymen. But as bad as two men kissing was to me and my 10-year-old brain, if you understand the natural process of how they surgically mutilate little kids, little boys, to try and turn them into girls, I mean, it's not only gross, but it's an incredibly sad process, the actual process of surgically what they do to these kids. I don't want to go into all the details because it would get way too graphic here, but suffice it to say, the process of becoming a woman is not a one-time surgery and bada bing, bada boom, you're a woman. It requires a level of medical torture that I would not wish on my worst enemies. It probably violates the Geneva Convention, if we're being honest. But this 16-year-old boy indicated his desire to irreversibly mutilate his body right after making an attempt on his life. And then the hospital, they just assumed custody over him. The state removes the parents, and they handed him over to the people who would benefit from him surgically altering his life. And there's a really dark side to this too, and that is the amount of that doctors make off of these confused individuals. The parents, however, of this child didn't give up. They decided to fight for their kid, and they waged 3 years of court battles trying to regain custody over their child. The court battles didn't end until he was 19 years old, when he was an adult. And the reason I want to talk about this story is because the slippery slope is so real. Think about it. 10 years ago, Obergefell had yet to be decided. A lot of states, they still would not permit men to marry men. Do you realize just how far we have come in these past 10 years? Now, the left at the time mocked the right, saying that we were strawmanning their arguments, saying the state really has no business telling people what they can and they can't do in the privacy of their own bedrooms. We were told that love is love and that to oppose this movement makes you an irredeemable person. Yet every single slippery slope argument that we were told was outlandish has now come to pass. 10 years ago, in most states, a man could not get married to a man. Now, in some states, parents will lose custody of their children if they want to keep them off puberty blockers and away from doctors who want to cut up their bodies. If you don't sense the way everything is trending in the culture, this is coming to more and more states near you. The entire Love is Love movement is predicated at getting to the kids and using them to further advance their agenda. The slippery slope is so real, and these first 10 years have just been a small taste of what happens when you remove the anchor tethering the Christian sexual ethic and biology from society at large. The reason I bring this up to talk about today is because, Lord willing, one day I want to become a father. And I think it's hard enough raising children in this world with so many demonic forces seeking power over them. It has never been easier for evil people to gain access and influence to innocent children than it is today through the usage of the internet. Say that one of my kids down the road did have a struggle with gender dysphoria. That would be one of the hardest challenges I could ever imagine. My love for them would not diminish in the slightest, but my love for them would compel me to share truth with them and attempt to prevent them from harming themselves in a decision that they would later regret. This is a burden that no parent would ever wish to carry. And my heart goes out to all of them in this situation. But what is not needed, what is evil and demonic, is the state showing up at your door and taking your child away, all because you won't allow them to mutilate themselves. I can't imagine how hard it must be when you love your own child unconditionally and you see this thing that's harming them and you want to protect them from it when knock, 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 it's the policeman on behalf of the state here to take little Timmy away so that he could become little Sally. No, you do not have to co-parent with the government. The state has no power to force you to take your child to mutilate themselves. We gotta take a step back, though, and realize, why did this happen in the first place? It's because conservatives either did not seek political power or because they did not use political power. A good usage of political power would be banning these surgeries and jailing the so-called doctors that profit off of them. But small government conservatives and state legislatures across the country are terrified of doing that. They believe in the name of small government that means no government, and that we can't use the power of the state to prevent children from irreversibly harming themselves. Another reason that this is happening is because we have refused to engage with the political. The LGBT movement is militant in their civic engagement, and the church has been, by and large, missing in action. The ancient Greek philosopher Pericles said, just because you do not take an interest in politics does not mean politics won't take an interest in you. And these are the battles that need to be fought unless we want more and more children being taken by the state like lambs are to the slaughter. Politics is messy, but as American Christians, it is incumbent, it is a matter of stewardship that we stand up and speak out against this evil. Anywho, that's kind of what I have for this week. And that's what we're going to be doing on Friday. We're going to be gathering together, rallying against this evil that permeates in our society, and resolving to fight for truth, goodness, and beauty in the public square, not just our private lives. I hope to see you all there. But for now, this has been your weekly briefing.